Today in Math 3, there's going to be 3 parts of the lesson. Part 1, finish labeling the reference angle, the hypotenuse, the adjacent leg, and the opposite leg. Part 2, you'll learn about the trig ratios, sine, cosine, and tangent. In Part 3, you will find the sine, cosine, and tangent of special right triangles. All right, first, grab this paper from yesterday, find the reference angle, and highlight both sides of the reference angle. The one that's opposite the right angle is always the hypotenuse. The other side of the reference angle is the adjacent leg. And the one we haven't labeled yet is called the opposite leg. Continue this process for all 12 triangles. When we're done, we'll move on to the next step. All right, welcome to Part 2. Part 2, we are going to learn about the trig ratios. Remember, a ratio is a fraction. And so the sine ratio is a fraction made out of the opposite leg of a right triangle over the hypotenuse. The cosine ratio is a fraction made out of the adjacent leg and the hypotenuse. And the tangent ratio is a fraction made out of the opposite leg and the adjacent leg. So here I have a right triangle with a 53-degree reference angle. I've highlighted the reference angle. I labeled the hypotenuse. I labeled the adjacent. The side that's not highlighted is the opposite. And now I'm going to use these numbers to write the sine, cosine, and tangent ratio. So the sine of 53 degrees is the opposite side, which is 4, over the hypotenuse, which is 5. The cosine of 53 degrees is the adjacent side, which is 3, over the hypotenuse, which is 5. And the tangent of 53 degrees is the opposite side, which is 4, over the adjacent side, which is 3. Those are the trig ratios that we learn in Math 2. Finally, Part 3, we're going to find the sine ratio, the cosine ratio, and the tangent ratio of the special right triangles that we've been studying. We're going to use our compass to do this, so you want to start out with the worksheet that you get, and it tells you to draw a 45, 45, 90 triangle with a leg of 5. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so these are the 2 legs of my 45, 45, 90 right triangle. So this leg is 5. This leg is 5. This angle is 90. These angles are 45. And we know that the hypotenuse is 5 root 2. So the next thing I want to do, since I want to find the sine, cosine, and tangent of 45 degrees, is I'm going to use one of the 45 degrees as my reference angle. I'm going to label the hypotenuse with an H, the adjacent side with an A, and the opposite side with an O. The sine of 45 degrees is the opposite over the hypotenuse, so it's 5 over 5 root 2. The cosine of 45 degrees is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, so it is also 5 over 5 root 2. And finally, the tangent of 45 is the opposite and the adjacent, which would be 5 over 5. Now, all of these fractions need to be simplified. Here, the 5's will divide out, and we get 1 over root 2. Then we have to rationalize the root 2, and we get root 2 over 2. That is the sine of 45 degrees. The cosine of 45 degrees will be the same thing. The tangent of 45 degrees will be 1. All right, on the next part, we're going to find the sine, cosine, and tangent of a 30-degree angle. So the very first thing we're going to do, it says to make the leg 5. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be the short leg of my triangle. And then I'm going to use the graph paper to set my compass at 10 squares of graph paper. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'm going to set my compass so that my pivot point is at one end of 10 and my pencil hole is at the other end. All right, now I'm going to put my pivot point right here at the top of my short leg, and I'm going to swing an arc that will have a length of 10 squares of graph paper. Okay, so this is going to be my long leg, and this is going to be my hypotenuse, because I know that when my short leg is 5, my hypotenuse will be 10. This angle's 90, this angle's 60, this angle's 30, so this side has to be 5 root 3. So now I'm going to label my reference angle, which is the 30-degree angle, because I'm trying to find the sine, cosine, and tangent of 30. So this is my hypotenuse, this is my adjacent leg, this is my opposite leg. So the sine of 30 is opposite over hypotenuse, or 5 over 10. The cosine of 30 is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, 5 root 3 over 10. And the tangent ratio is the opposite over the adjacent, so it's 5 over 5 root 3. Now I need to simplify all of these fractions. So the sine of 30 is 1/2. Here 5 goes into itself once and 5 goes into 10 twice. So the cosine of 30 is root 3 over 2. And then finally here, the 5's will divide out, and I have 1 over root 3, which I need to rationalize. And I end up with the square root of 3 over 3. Now to find the sine, cosine, and tangent of 60, I just want to reverse my triangle and make the 60-degree angle the reference angle and relabel my triangle. If the 60 is the reference angle, 10 will still be the hypotenuse, but the adjacent will be 5 and the opposite will be 5 root 3. Now complete the rest of the triangles on the worksheet.